Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third Lunch and Learn of 2022. Before we get started, I just wanted to pitch our license plate voucher that we have. So we have a license plate. It is very camo, and it has some native plants on it. And if we can reach 3,000 voucher pre-sales, then the license plate can be produced. So there's no obligation if the license plate isn't produced. You can, you can buy the voucher, and then if it's not produced, then it'll go back. You'll receive your money back. So the form is not too complicated, but you will need the recipient license tag information. So please support the Florida Native Plants Society and all of our work to conserve, preserve, and restore the native plants, native plant communities of Florida, as well as all of our educational work by buying a license plate voucher by going to FNPS.org, and the link is right there in the center. So without further ado, here is Deborah Green.
Thank you so much, Valerie, for inviting me to do a lunch and learn. I know I'm an esteemed company in doing these. And I've been a member of the society since the late 80s and gone to a few conventions over the years, conferences. And I'm a member of Couplet Fern currently in Seminole County and with Mark. And I was a member of Tarflower. We do a lot with them, but my affiliation most of the time is with Orange Audubon Society. So this topic, Plants for Birds, a Caterpillar Connection, is one that is dear to my heart, and I've been giving this talk around. And I'd like to start with why are we into native plants? And I could get a lot of reasons from you all thinking about that, but I will just say why I have been into them. When I was an entomology student in the 70s, and by the way, I was a member of the California Native Plant Society, it was because no pesticides would be needed for if you grew native plants. They would have some insects on them, but no pesty ones, and no pesticides would be needed. That was what I was into, biological control of pests back then. And then I had a chance to work in water conservation for 9 years in Volusia County. So why are we into native plants water conservation? If you put the right plant in the right place, you'll need water only for establishment. This is part of my landscape in Longwood. And now it's for the birds, because 2.9 billion birds have disappeared in 50 years by a wide spectrum of studies. We're down 30% from previous populations, and for a variety of reasons, loss of habitat being one of the main ones. So here I go with my talk, Plants for Birds, a Caterpillar Connection. And the way it's going to lay out is first I'm going to talk about the birds, then the caterpillars, and finally get to the plants that are best for the caterpillars. And be thinking, I know you will be thinking about which ones are best in your area. I'm in Central Florida, and I would love to hear in the chat which ones are good in your area, and maybe we can increase the body of knowledge. Okay, well, fall and spring migration are exciting times of the year, and this is Mead Botanic Garden in Winter Park, and this is one of our bird walks. I think it's a spring one before COVID, and we're looking for these little birds. What birds do many birders like best? Songbirds. The little ones that are very colorful. These are vireos, buntings, and warblers, especially warblers. They're gorgeous little songbirds, and there are 37 species in the eastern United States. They pass through Florida going north or south to the tropics. Just a very few breed in Central Florida. And they're thought to be originally tropical. Why is that? Because 2/3 of the species of warblers live in the tropics. And also 2/3 of the time of the year they spend in the tropics, and that there are also many other species of tropical warblers, more species of tropical warblers than the 37 species that come up and down the coast of the United States. So let me talk about this migration. It's very dangerous. I'm going to try to establish why they would do it. They migrate at night. They navigate by the stars and objects below, water bodies, mountain ranges. The reasons to migrate at night are because they avoid predation by hawks, which need the daylight and the thermals and so forth. And also it is less turbulent at night, but it's dangerous. Now, many species winter in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean wintering species have an easier migration, right from Cuba, hop to the Florida, work your way up the coast to your breeding ground in the northeastern United States. But others that winter in Central and South America have to cross either the Gulf or land, and that involves crossing one of the biggest deserts. So the trans-Gulf migrants, when they hit storms, they fall on oil rigs or ships or just right into the water, much mortality. And those circum-Gulf migrants must cross the largest desert in North America. So it's not an easy thing to do. So what's the reward for the risk of these dangerous flights? It is the leafing out of the eastern deciduous forests and caterpillars feeding on the new leaves. The caterpillars, larvae of small moths, microlepidoptera. And why so great? Because they're perfect food for nestlings. They have exoskeletons like all insects, but they're soft. And they're easy for a warbler to pick them out with that sharp little beak and stuff them down the nestling's gullet. And caterpillars are also rich in carotenoids. This is a Doug Tallamy fact I learned, which may contribute to the colorful colors of the adult warblers. And again, they're perfectly sized, they're soft. This is actually the moth, but perfect for feeding nestlings. So songbird migration is timed with spring leafing out of the deciduous forests. And how do I know this? I've read several times the wonderful book by Scott Weidensaul, Living on the Wind Across the Hemisphere with Migratory Birds, from 2000, which was a Pulitzer Prize finalist, a very rare book, birding book, that made it to the nonfiction category finalists in Pulitzer Prize. Scott is an amazing writer, and he's going to be speaking for Orange Audubon on the 20th, and I will give you that at the end of this talk. So caterpillar hatch is timed with the emergence of new leaves of deciduous trees. And which stage of the moth overwinters? Egg, larvae, pupae, or adult? This is the California oak moth that I actually did my thesis related to. So usually the toughest stage is the pupa. So like in this gypsy moth cocoon, it overwintered, and then the adult hatched out and then laid the eggs, and then the little larvae will start eating the leaves. It could be that the eggs overwinter tucked in a little bit of the bark. It could even be the adult overwinters. There's various possibilities for each species, but most often it's going to be the pupae. By the way, not only deciduous trees, conifers have new growth in caterpillars too. So to review this, warblers and other songbirds need caterpillars to feed their young. And this picture was taken in spring migration at Fort DeSoto Park, our friend Sam, and shows that even when not in breeding, the warblers can use the caterpillars for food. But in winter in a migration, berries and seeds sustain the birds. So this is, I know everybody's familiar with this concept of planting trees and shrubs with berries for the birds. This concept of the caterpillars may be less familiar. So the problem is that the forests are decreasing, and they have been decreasing since European settlers came to the New World with their tools that could cut down the forest rapidly. And of course, it continues and continues. And in the Amazon, you know about this. And not only are they being cut, but there's fires. So this is reducing the habitat for the caterpillars. So what can you do to help songbirds? Plant the best trees for caterpillars in addition to trees and shrubs with berries, and learn to live with caterpillar damage on your plants. Use no pesticides, and reduce your lawn and change the palette of your plants in your yard to plants that foster caterpillars, the native plants of your area. And you might be already ahead of me thinking that this sounds like Doug Tallamy's work, and it is. I was very inspired by Doug Tallamy's work. And as a matter of fact, his second book, his latest book from last year, Nature's Best Hope, in it he says that the habitat for the caterpillars is completely declining, that there's only 5% of the US that is in parks and preserves, 41% is in agriculture, but that is only, that is monoculture, not suitable for, it's not good habitat. And 54% is suburban and urban. And that's what we have to attack. And Tallamy says, it's not enough to just quietly plant your natives, which is what I've been doing for so many years. You've got to teach about it and get your neighbors to do it and create a homegrown national park. So yes, he's gotten me on the lecture circuit off my shyness. Okay, and he says how to be a moth defender: turn off outdoor lights when not in use, add motion sensors to security lights, install yellow bulbs. Yellow is less attractive to the moths than the white. And if we all did this, we would save billions of moths and other beneficial insects each year. So those aren't too hard. So you may be wondering, how do you identify these microlepidoptera caterpillars? The pretty butterfly caterpillars have such distinctive characteristics, and there's books on it and everything. They're not that hard. But the microlepidoptera, there's so many of them, and they are very hard. So this is my friend Julieta. I don't know if she's on today. I hope so. She is the person who receives the submissions of insects to identify in Gainesville at the University at the State Department of Agriculture, Division of Plant Industry. We worked together there in the 80s. And so what you'd have to do, and I'll show you the next slide, that's my major professor, Dr. Jerry Powell. I was looking for a picture of rearing caterpillars, and his came up. What you have to do is get a bunch of the same species, give them some food in a bag, keep them rearing until they come out adults, and then pin them and send them to the place to identify, which in our case would be through Julieta at the DPI, Division of Plant Industry. And that is a lot of work. Doug Tallamy is doing that all the time. That's his job as a professor of entomology at University of Delaware. But I found I'm a very lazy entomologist, and I don't do that. When I did it once, the whole package got moldy, and so I just gave up on that. So I'm doing it kind of backwards on, well, let me just first tell you that The Caterpillars of Eastern North America is a book that you can work with to try to identify them. And that is written by Dave Wagner, who's a student of my Dr. Powell. And so evidence that planting native plants helps birds. Dr. Tallamy's grad student, Desiree Narango, did a research study related to the Carolina chickadee and found that yards where there were 70% or more natives had chickadees, and yards where there were less than 70% did not. So the chickadees need so many little caterpillars, which are on the native plants, that anyway, that's a beautiful study that we can cite, that you need native plants for the caterpillars. So just look up Desiree Narango and the chickadee study to find that one. All right, well, I give this talk to general audiences, garden clubs, and other groups. So I always plug the Native Plant Society and all the resources that are available through the society. And National Audubon also has a Plants for Birds effort, and they have lists of species that are good for your area, that are good for the birds. And Orange Audubon has a big Plants for Birds effort. We had Catherine Bowman a couple years ago. We always have talks on planting. And we had a few years ago a yards tour. We had 2 years we had yards tour. This is my yard. I want to do it again. I know some of your chapters around the state do it. It is just a lot of work, and we just haven't quite done it. We find it a little discouraging how few yards there are that are ready, that don't have invasives and so forth. So, but yes, it's definitely, to see it in place is the best way to do it. As a matter of fact, I have a nephew who's a filmmaker, and he and I are working together on a yard video. So maybe I'll be able to share that with you at a later time. Just lessons learned, not that mine is perfect. It's just lessons learned over the years. And I just want to point out that non-native plants to remove, when you first moved in your house, you probably have foundation plants around, and these are the old school, selected to repel insects, the shiny cuticles, selected for no insects, like the camellias, pittosporums, viburnums. So those you take out, and you go for the plants. Take all these out and go for the plants that the caterpillars eat, and then live with the caterpillars, which really shouldn't damage the look very much at all, these microlepidoptera. And Tallamy has a great tree list in his first book, Bringing Nature Home, of like the oak has 534 species and so forth, but this is tapered to the northeast. So it happens that we have Mary Kiem and Randy Snyder in both Native Plant Society, Tar Flower Chapter, and Orange Audubon, and they put together a brochure with some of the top ones for Central Florida. I don't know if you and the rest of the state have such a list, but if not, it's definitely worth making and sharing, having available to share with the public. So I'll just go through a very few, my very short list of top plants, and the top of all is our oaks. 534 species have been recorded, caterpillars have been recorded on oaks by Dr. Doug Tallamy, and all the oaks are good. And here we are at Mead Gardens, we're looking up at the oaks because that's where the birds are. And Tallamy has written not his third book, he's got several others, but a third, anyway, he's written a new book, The Nature of Oaks. I have not had a chance to read it yet, but I know it will be great. Oaks are so important in North America. And the next one on his list are the willows, Carolina willow. Unfortunately, that's not going to be a tree that you're going to have at your home in most places. But when we go out birding, we look in the willows, like for the yellow warbler in migration, and if we're lucky, overwintering, it is always in the willows. And then he mentions the wild cherries generically, and he found 456 species of caterpillars on the wild cherries. And we particularly like the Prunus serotina, the wild black cherry, and for several reasons. It's got a lot of caterpillars on it, and also the fruit are a perfect size for the birds. Now, one drawback, you might think, of the eastern black cherry, wild black cherry, is tent caterpillars, kind of unsightly. But for birders, it happens the yellow-billed cuckoo eats tent caterpillars, and that's a highly sought after bird. So we love the eastern, the wild black cherry, and wish it was more in horticulture and possibly a street tree. And the next one that birders love, because it has a lot of attracts birds, is sugarberry, Celtis levigata. And I put it in my yard initially because to attract the butterflies. There's two gorgeous butterflies, the hackberry emperor and the tawny emperor, that breed on it. I've never seen them in my yard, although I have quite a few sugarberries now. But I do see birds feeding on it. So it has the caterpillars, plus its little berries are the right size for birds and sweet, and a lot of birds like them. And as a possible street tree and used more widely ornamentally, it has the cool bark, and it grows straight up, and it grows pretty fast. So I recommend sugarberry. And then our state tree the sable or cabbage palm. One of the cool things is that there's the oak leaf skeletonizer on the bottom of the leaves. Here's the little microlepidoptera that hatches into this little moth. But it happens that the yellow-throated warbler always can be found eating these caterpillars. So there's actually association between this warbler wintering in Florida and this tree. So get it for your yard. And then also, of course, it has so many sweet, small fruits that are eaten by birds. So what do you say about the beautyberry and some of the other trees that have berries? They may not foster caterpillars. Like these leaves are hairy. And if you watch your beautyberries, you probably won't see too much caterpillar damage or birds feeding on the caterpillars. So it's kind of two categories then, your fruits and then your caterpillar natives. And by the way, butterfly caterpillars are not optimal for the birds, these small birds. A blue jay might go for these larger caterpillars, but all these protuberances, plus out of these things here, they exude some weird odors and tastes. That's aposematic coloration, if you guys remember your biology, and that will is not appeal to the birds. So it's a whole different thing then to breed for the caterpillars, for the butterflies, than it is the microlepidoptera for the birds. So what are the best microlepidoptera caterpillars for Central Florida anyway? The oaks, the cherries, the sugar hackberry. Well, and we now just call it sugarberry, but I looked it up and finally figured out that hackberry is the one that's farther north. So ours is the sugarberry, Celtis levigata. And then the sable palm. These are the top ones. And by the way, I welcome you suggesting which ones you think are top in your area, South Florida, the Panhandle. But as my final point, Tallamy's an academic person, although he's really made the bridge and giving his lectures that are accessible to people. He's an unusual academic professor, but he partnered with a lady who is making his website and his whole effort to get on the map, Homegrown National Park, get on the map. So go to this, homegrownnationalpark.org, and put in the acreage of your home that is in natives. And his idea is one person at a time, we can regenerate biodiversity. So I am just about done. I'll give a plug for the talk for January 20th, Scott Weidensaul. Just go to Orange Audubon Society on YouTube and it'll pop up. And he is amazing. And then I will say, are there any questions?
Great, thank you so much, Deborah. I want to say you drew a big crowd. We have 84 people on.
It's very weird to be talking here and I can't see anybody. So except you. So you guys out there, hey, I probably know a lot of you. And if there are any questions, please ask.
Okay, yeah, so we didn't have a bunch of questions and the first one we had was answered. Clara Mullins asks the name of the book you mentioned by Scott Weidensaul, and then Andrea Ersling said the book is called Living on the Wind.
Yes, that's the first one. And there's some technology of studying migration, the transmitters and stuff that is progressed, and that's the stuff he's put in the new book. I'm sure I'm still working on reading it in time, but that book tells you all about that migration, taking off the birds, taking off from Central America, doing that flight. It's a beautifully written book.
And Tree Checkup would like to know if there's a link for your best plants for birds brochure.
Yes, you can Google the name of that. I guess I'll have to go back.
Yeah,
bird and butterfly friendly. Or do you have that link to share?
No, I don't have the link. I'm just going to look it up and post it in the chat.
Okay, well, here it is. Just look up this name, bird and butterfly friendly plants for Central Florida, and that should come up with a link. Okay. And again, kudos to Mary Kiem and Randy who put that together. They got feedback from a number of us, but they did the work.
Okay, yes, I found a link and I am dropping it in the chat. I couldn't find it on your website, by the way, so maybe you want to feature that a little more. I didn't see a link immediately when I went to go look.
Yes, it's a little hidden.
Okay.
But when you clicked on it, it came up?
Yeah, when I Googled it, it came up, yeah.
Okay.
So we're good. Let's see. Mark Tome says, thanks for emphasizing native plants. UF Extension and the state all have Florida-friendly lists of plants, but they are not all native. He thinks they've weeded out, so to speak, the invasive plants.
That's good. Yes. Yes, Florida-friendly, is a positive effort, but some of the ones that they recommend are not conducive to the caterpillars. They have waxy surfaces, and maybe they're somewhat drought tolerant, and if planted in the right place, they're good. But you can't go wrong if you just go totally native.
Yes, and if you're looking for a specific look, we have our FNPS members only group. We have Florida Native Gardening. If you have a look that you're trying to get from some Florida friendly non-native, just post it and why you want that, and somebody will help you out with finding an equivalent native.
And so back when I worked in water, 2001, the Florida Nursery Growers and Landscape Association had their plants of the year, included 2 natives. And actually, I learned recently it was Alan Shapiro who recommended those. Alan, if you're on, hi. But the 2 that they recommended that year as plants of the year were Walter Viburnum and Simpson Stopper. So why aren't those in horticulture? Easy to find. I mean, why do you have to go to a native nursery to find those 2? They're bulletproof, fantastic plants. So it's been slow. But I appreciate everybody working at it, trying to educate.
The most natives you can find at like a Lowe's or something is like a tropical milkweed tagged as butterfly milkweed.
Quite true.
It's pretty sad state of affairs. Okay, on to some more actual questions. Wendell Cropper asks, comments, plant phenology has been changing with climate change. Are changes in leaf out timing affecting bird migrations?
There's some evidence that it is, yes. And that's all accumulated through, well, there's a new thing called eBird. If you're not a birder yet, you might want to check that out if you want to get into birding. It's from Cornell Lab of Ornithology, where you can record your sightings every time you're birding. And that has produced a tremendous body of knowledge. And yes, they're still analyzing it all, but it seems like certain species are getting a little bit out of sync and ranges are changing. Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Randy Snyder, Mary Kiem say, hi, Deborah.
Hi, Randy and Mary.
They posted the Swainson's thrushes love American beautyberry.
Who likes American beautyberry?
Swainson's thrushes.
Okay. Yes. For the fruit though, right? Have you guys ever seen them eating caterpillars on it?
I will see if they comment. We shouldn't have too big of a delay. I got my internet all sorted out, but they might take a second to comment.
Yeah, and so we just have to watch our plants and see where the birds go. That's the strategy I'm using now. And then even like sugarberry, it's because we birders like the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive, and there's tons of sugarberry there, and that's where we look for the birds. And so, it could also work in your yard, but and the oaks are just the best. But yeah, I mean, I wish it was easier to find the caterpillars and get them identified like Dr. Tallamy is doing all the time. But I guess I'm a lazy entomologist and I'm not doing that. So I'm just watching for where the birds are going.
Yes, they chimed in that it's the fruit of the American beautyberry that the Swainson's thrushes do prefer.
So both are needed.
Yes, beautyberry, I don't know what caterpillars it hosts. or if it does. I mean, I think it does its best to repel things, right? Because you can use the leaves as insect repellent.
Oh, okay, valid. And they're a little bit hairy, so those hairs
hairy.
are a deterrent. Okay, anything waxy or hairy is a deterrent to the little caterpillars. It's microlepidoptera. If Julieta's on, maybe she can quickly look it up.
I have not seen her hop in the chat yet.
And I was trying to engage her to let's make lists of which species she gets requests to identify, that which plant species have the most caterpillars, and she couldn't really. The entomologist, the microlepidoptera stuff there wasn't really ready to spend time on this project, but she started sending me some stuff, and if she could be engaged to do a follow-up presentation on what she knows, that would be very cool.
Just off the cuff, are you aware of any easy to identify small caterpillars that are used by birds that, somebody you'd be like, oh, that's definitely that?
No, but they're categories of the way they feed. They can roll the leaves, and then you can look it up under leaf rollers and get to their family, and maybe using a book like I showed you or internet resources, identify it. Leaf rollers, there's leaf miners. I think the birds go in and get the ones that are skeletonizing in between the leaves. So there's those general categories, but no, I can't otherwise think of any tips on some really easy to identify ones.
Well, there's the palm skeletonizers that you mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah, that is
right?
one.
So I mean, there's only one of those, right? And it does the one thing that's like really obvious.
Yes, everybody's just pick up a palm frond, palm frond. You see all that? That's frass, and that's from their feeding.
And the tent caterpillars, are those palatable to the birds?
The
too
cuckoo.
Big? The cuckoo.
Because it's got a very thick beak that can get through the webbing.
Do we have inland cuckoos? I mean, I know I see all the sightings on like the coast.
Mangrove cuckoos and stuff. Yes, we do. We have the yellow-billed cuckoo is the common one in Florida, and it's not common, but it's very secretive. So, but a good trick would be to look for those tent caterpillar clusters and look around there.
So like pecans get a lot of tent caterpillars.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the hickories and pecans. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Back to people's questions. Are there any small or large shrubs that are, I would say, she said caterpillar friendly, but you're talking about small caterpillars. So I'm going to ask you about small caterpillar friendly.
Shrubs. Well, here, we're looking at Mary's list right here.
Right here.
She's got beautyberry, but she says fruit for birds, deerberry, fruit, flatwoods plum. Okay, the prunus species are the top choices for attracting insect-eating birds. So your flatwoods plum or hog plum, if you can get it to grow. I have not been very successful with that species.
Mine grew well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the myrtle oak, or any of the oaks, saw palmetto. It both has the fruit for the birds, dense cover, host for the palmetto skipper. So that skipper feeds on it, and probably a few others. Southern wax myrtle. Okay, this is one I like to talk about. The fruits are for the yellow-rumped warblers and tree swallows. And whereas most of the warblers are going farther south where they can get some insects because they don't have the digestive enzymes to digest some of these fruits, like this waxy fruit of the southern wax myrtle, the yellow-rumped warbler does have that. So it's the warbler that can overwinter the farthest north. And I know I'm in sandhill habitat. My efforts to grow southern wax myrtle haven't been too successful. It needs more water than I give. I got a little bit started, but we learned when I was with the Richard Poole and the bird banding group that the wax myrtle area is a real attractant for birds. So you can think about that one, especially if you're willing to give it the water to get established. But that again was for the fruits with those little orange dots on the bottom. Remember the glands? It might be repellent to the caterpillars. I can't say for sure. And then here she's got Walter viburnum and fruit for wildlife. Yeah, I don't see too many caterpillars or the birds on that. It's more for the fruit, and it's just such a gorgeous shrub. And then the Alpine holly, similarly, it's mostly for the fruit. But, you know, we just got to observe, and if we see one, let's share the information.
Okay, so myrtle oak, I mean, it's sort of a slow growing oak. It could be a tree if you want it to be, or you could probably hedge it, I guess, if you got like a bunch of them. And that actually, that is a caterpillar host plant that could be a shrub, a small shrub
Yes.
or a large shrub. And then saw
And it should,
palmetto, go ahead, sorry. Sorry.
and it shouldn't need too much water
No, yeah, so that's dry.
after establishment.
And then saw palmetto also dry area. So if you've got like a high sandy yard, and that'll be a host for palmetto skipper, which are totally cute, by the way, if you haven't seen one. As an adult, they're like adorable little orangey yellow things. And otherwise, that's all the suggestions from this as small insect generators for your birds.
Okay. And then she goes into vines and flowers and ground covers. Okay. I'm going to download this and use it as a starting point. And it if anybody in like the Panhandle or South Florida has a similar list, will you share what you've developed?
Okay, yes, maybe someone will chime in the chat. And I am not like a landscaping plant expert. I generally do, wild plants is kind of my thing, especially Central Florida wild plants. But if you go to fnps.org and click on Find Plants, we do have like what insects use that as a host plant. So native plants landscape plant for your area, and you can find plants based on your location and need. So I'm going to say I'm an Osceola, and then say I want a full sun, and I can submit. Wait, I should do by plant form. Sorry, you can't see this, Deborah.
It's okay. Yeah, the resources have really increased since the old days.
So here's all the shrubs. And so here's like, if you click on this and you scroll down, see it says, we're on the wax myrtle. So I scroll down and it says larval host for banded hair streak and red banded hair streak. So it's good to make sure to search for plants that work for your location. And then you can further refine that by looking at each plant and seeing what its larval hosts are, and then looking up the size of that caterpillar to see if that's going to feed the birds that you want.
Yes. It might make a gorgeous butterfly, but not necessarily going to feed those warblers.
Right. Randy Snyder and Mary Kiem would like you to name your favorite native shrubs, please.
Me?
Yes.
Well, I think Walter Viburnum and Simpson Stopper. They're just so nice.
Oh, you're covering the microphone, Deborah.
Walter Viburnum and Simpson Stopper and Yalpon holly. It is not, I don't see birds going to it, but I do like yellow star anise. And yeah, I really love Simpson Stopper. It's so pretty.
Oh, such a great plant.
Yeah.
Can be a little hard to manage with the little shoots.
Mm-hmm. And again, for trees, I'm a big fan of the sugarberry. And I don't think it's typical even in the native nurseries. So you just got to start asking for it. I just gave a very quick 3-minute talk to the Orange County Commission. Oh, you were there, Valerie.
I was there, yes, good job.
Thanks, and you too. And it was to try to make the point that you can't just use the cop-out statement that these plants aren't available in nurseries. We got to create the market. So by starting to ask for them more and more, we get the growers to grow them.
Right, yes, and support your local native nursery, because this is the only people that are growing the native plants and distributing them right now. Very important. Clara Mullen says, thank you, Dr. Green. Great presentation.
Thank you.
And Laura L. asked the perpetual sort of meta question is how to get HOAs and county planners on board.
Okay, I am in an HOA and I've just been taking it slow. Let's see. I just got on the Arbor Committee a few months ago, and I'm trying to change the tree list to emphasize the natives, and I'm not there yet. It's a slow process. But basically, it's just a matter of doing it aesthetically, so nobody flags that you're doing something too different. Curves. At one of the native plant conferences, we had Rich Darkey, you guys remember? The landscape architect who is one of the people behind the High Line in Manhattan and many other cool projects. And he's actually collaborated with Doug Tallamy on one of his books. But Rich Darkey, I always remember him saying, you make little pathways going in that invite the eye. And I was doing that just intuitively. So just try to make it look good and take it slow. And yeah, hopefully your HOA is not totally obsessed with the green lawn. Mine is a little looser, fortunately. So, but yeah, again, just try to make it look good. Curves and keep it trimmed when needed. Even I hate to deadhead seeds because I know they're for the birds, but in the area that faces onto the public street, I do it to make it look good.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your HOA, right? I mean, some HOAs will come down on you for, your grass is 4 inches tall and it should be two. I just bought a house that's completely native landscaped, and there's no special HOA permission for anything that she did, and everybody's fine with it. So it really depends on your HOA. Now, as we discussed last week, you can attempt to get on your HOA board, like Deborah, and
I'm not on the board, I'm on the Arbor Committee.
You're on the Arbor Committee. Okay, sorry.
And that's a very nice committee that's dedicated to stopping all the rampant cutting of trees just for new driveways or whatever from new people in the community that don't have a sense.
That's good. Yeah.
So your HOA is not so bad also?
Right. Yeah. But if you're in a bad HOA, you're setting yourself up for potentially for some legal problems because they can fine you.
Although there is the law, I think for 2009, that protects us, but who wants to get into that kind of fuss?
Right. Yeah. So technically there's a statute, a Florida statute, a Florida friendly landscaping statute, and no HOA is supposed to prohibit you from implementing Florida friendly landscaping in your lawn. However, they can decide how you do it, and they can make you go through approvals. And so, people have fought this in court, and it's been tough for some people. But you may have the law on your side, but it's better to make friends than enemies, in my estimation.
And I wanted to ask if anybody listening has any experience in protecting longleaf pine, which we all know have decreased in range so drastically. We have them in our community, and I'd like to see if I could find reference to special protections for them. So please, here's my email address. Email me if you know anything about that anywhere, any precedent anywhere.
Bill Klein asks, do you have information about doing caterpillar surveys like we have for butterflies? We're starting a native plant garden project to study pollinators, and caterpillars may be good to study.
Yes, I would contact Julieta. She's the most close to the microlepidoptera world of anyone I know right now.
Okay.
And for butterflies, we know one of our big experts is Mark Minnow. Mm-hmm. Contact him.
We have a question. Oh, Carolyn Lamont would like to know about your background. She is assuming it's your ceiling, but in fact, you're using a Zoom background.
Oh, yes. That is some birds in flight. I've even forgotten who took that picture. But yeah, Orange Audubon does a lot of online stuff. We have a bird chat every Thursday night. And my colleagues, Kathy Rigling and Susan Dorman Barrett, and my other colleagues doing that, we've all used a background on Zoom. So that's just one of many we use.
CJ Taylor asks for you to show the second page of the bird and butterfly friendly brochure, please.
I will. And this technology is pretty cool, I think. Very cool. There it is. But just download it and then you'll have it.
Yes, I posted the link earlier, so you can just pop in and download it and read it at your leisure, refer to it at your leisure.
And again, please make one for you. You can put your membership information in it and print it on just, black and white paper, not too expensive.
And while we have that up, Bonnie Ida asks if all non-native plants are equally undesirable.
Well, I mean, a lot of butterfly gardeners jump out off the native and do have some pentas around. They're very good for feeding butterflies. Let me think of any non-natives. I've left a few non-native plants just that were in the yard just because I don't have anything immediately to replace them with, and they have some color or something. Like I've left some Athralis and some plumbago, and some of the crepe myrtles that were there, I've just left. But I'm at a high enough percent that I do have the chickadees. And so yes, are any non-natives any good? I can't think of any in particular, but thanks for asking.
Well, okay. I mean, my comment is the worst ones are the incredibly invasive ones that you should absolutely not be planting, and you should be totally removing. On this page, actually, we have a list: air potato, Brazilian pepper, cat claw vine, Chinese tallow, Mexican petunia, and skunk vine.
And rosary pea, that is starting in my neighborhood. And oh my goodness, no, the people that do the landscaping are really incapable of attacking it, and it needs to be attacked when the little seeds are in the pods before they drop, and that's what I'm most afraid of right now. And skunk vine got started in Central Florida after Charlie and Francis and Jean that year, spread around.
And just because you see something for sale does not mean it is not invasive. And it does not mean it's not known to, say, the IVS assessment to be invasive. Because the thing is, if something is assessed to be invasive, who puts the species on the noxious weeds list for Florida? It is the Florida legislature. And so each individual plant has to make it through the legislative process. And I don't know if you've ever watched the legislature be in session. It's not pretty. And so, this science-based, just because we've done the research and we have assessed it, and the University of Florida has assessed it as invasive, it's known to FLEPC to be invasive, does not mean that it's going to be outlawed from being for sale at any kind of nursery. So it's really safer to go native and to stay away from the big box nurseries if you're trying to decide what to plant in your yard.
And we learned with the monarchs that they spray the plants at the big box nurseries. So there would definitely be no caterpillars, even when that's what you're buying the plant for. I can just mention a couple native plants that are invasive in my yard. The cherry laurel. This has been in my existence. And when I planted years ago, blue curls, that went crazy, and I don't like it, so I weeded out. I know they still sell it.
You don't like blue curls?
No, I don't. It just got very aggressive. Okay, and another one. Oh, I'll tell you all, because I've been doing the natives in this particular yard for 18 years. Wild coffee went crazy in my yard, and so I would not give it to people nowadays. I mean, it took a long time, so it's okay to plant and just be aware. And then one that I didn't read anywhere was going to be a problem was yellow jessamine. Have you ever heard of that, Valerie?
I've never seen it be a problem anywhere.
Well, it must have been 20 years growth, because the previous owners of our house had it, and it choked and killed a beautiful sand post oak. And the root is tremendous. So it just like a very long process. I wouldn't say don't get yellow jessamine just after 10 years or so. Be aware 20 years, it might become a problem. But other than that, I can't think of any of the natives that have been a problem.
Yeah, and just because it's native and you want to plant it and it's good for the caterpillars does not mean it's going to work for your yard. Okay, so make sure that you're planting the right plant in the right place. It's one thing Florida Friendly totally has right is, you don't go get a plant that's like a pine lily and you've got like a sandhill yard and you just drop that pine lily in your sandhill yard. You're like, I'm going to get butterflies. No, you're not. So make sure that, the plant is behaving the way you want it to behave in your yard so the neighbors don't think that, you've been taken over by the homeless people or something. That, no, your house doesn't have any, that you don't live there anymore. So, be careful with what you plant and like do your research before you just buy everything at the nursery. I know it's tempting.
These are fun questions.
Let's see. Claudia Tull asks, do bird eat tussock moth caterpillars?
Well, that cuckoo does. 10 caterpillars, and I believe tussock moths as well. They are not afraid of them.
Carol Pasternak says, thanks for your efforts and thank you for the information. Someone, silly something says, please show the plants to be removed again or put up the link.
The plants what?
To be removed. Like, I think the ones with the waxy cuticles probably that you mentioned.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I'm not sure which way that is. Maybe back here. Oh, yeah. Okay, see these. Oh, Confederate jasmine. That
Ooh, yeah.
almost killed the tree of ours. It's very aggressive and so popular, and everybody wants to put it in. And then that shiny ligustrum. And let's see, camellias, pittosporums, all those, just the ones in typical horticulture that they plant as foundation plants around your house. And that's not even that good a principle after many years because they're too close to your house. They're kind of encouraging mold and all. So just take them out and start with some natives, get a little more sun in there. By the way, with all my trees, considering solar is impossible. But it's fun to have created kind of woods around. So I can do birding even at home. I know Mary and Randy have a great yard for that, and probably a lot of others of you do too. It's fun.
Let's see. Oh, Sean Newman would like to know if native hibiscus has any benefits to caterpillars.
I don't know. Native hibiscus, what I'm familiar with is the ones that are wetland plants, and I wouldn't try to grow them.
Okay, I pulled up the scarlet hibiscus on our website.
Scarlet hibiscus.
Scarlet hibiscus, and it says it attracts hummingbirds right to the flowers because they're really big. And it says that it's the larval host of the gray hairstreak, painted lady, common checkered skipper, and tropical checkered skipper butterflies, and 4 moths: pearly wood nymph, yellow scallop moth, Io moth, which is huge, probably not going to get any, songbirds eating that one, and the delightful bird dropping moths.
Oh, well, if so many caterpillars, butterfly caterpillars or large moth caterpillars can feed on it, chances are little ones can as well. So it's probably good, pretty good. I would find it hard to grow in my sandhill.
Yes, really, really likes it wet. I mean, it could be in standing water, I think, for good parts of the year. It also says it attracts the rose mallow bee, which I was not previously aware of, which is a hibiscus specialist.
Oh, very cool.
Who knew? See, this is why FNPS.org. Look up the plant in our database because we put all this sort of good information in there. Shirley is on top of it.
Charlie?
Shirley Denton. She's
Oh,
our
yes.
web team. Yeah,
I don't
and
know if she's on. If you are, Shirley, I respect your work so much.
yeah, she's really good. Okay, let's see. Clara Mullins points out that arrowhead vine is moving northward.
Oh, that's an invasive arrowhead
Yeah,
vine.
the Sagittariat, it's really aggressive. We have some here in Central Florida, well, in Osceola County.
Mhm.
CJ Taylor says trumpet creeper is eating her sandhill yard, Campsis radicans.
Oh, yes, yes. Trumpet creeper is very strong.
Mm-hmm.
It's very thick, kind of chokes up some of your pines. Yep, I have that experience as well. We have to cut some of them, although they're so great and good for hummingbirds that I leave some as well.
Yeah, whenever you see a vine and you're considering putting a vine, think pretty hard. I mean, probably corky stem passion vine is the mildest vine that I'm aware of, but a lot of the native vines they're pretty vigorous. So have a plan for your vine. Rory says, I have room for cherry laurel. Songbirds complain vociferously when my wife suggests cutting them.
Yes, cherry laurel. Well, the birds come through in the winter and eat those seeds. The robins, the cedar waxwings. And I guess there's some caterpillars as well. But boy, they're aggressive.
Barbara Wirtz says, sorry she just got here, just on the Lunch and Learn. She says, are there any plants that particularly attract chickadees?
Well, chickadees are the caterpillars. So any of these that have a lot of caterpillars, oaks, what was our next? Willows is not something for the yards.
So I can vouch for this chickadee thing because we didn't have any chickadees in my former yard in St. Cloud until I finished the front yard renovation with a flatwoods plum, and as soon as that was 4 years old, chickadees nesting, and they did like to sit on it, and I did see them foraging in it some.
So yes, the cherries I would say would be a really good addition. Either flatwoods plum if you can get it to go, or Prunus serratina, wild cherry. And then the sugarberry. With all those caterpillars, it's got to be a good plant for the chickadees.
Great. Yes, I've never tried to grow sugarberry.
It's very fast.
I have seen it is it at Orlando Wetlands Park?
And Lake Apopka. In 18 years, it got about, this wide. It grew pretty fast. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I didn't know they were fast growers.
Yeah. And very straight, and it's a good looking tree. Let's see. That's what the bark looks like.
Oh yeah, the bark is so cool. Yeah, more people should definitely grow these if they can get them. Wrapping up the questions, Rory says, I have Boku scarlet hibiscus, but I have not seen much apparent larval activity. I'll keep my eyes open next season. Thanks, Deborah, for this talk.
Good, Rory. Yeah, his yard was on our plant tour, and it's very cool, but it is a go down to the wetlands, which I presume is where he has that scarlet hibiscus growing. Watch it, and then everybody watch this, and let's contribute later. I'm going to see if I can get Julieta to do a talk, and everybody can share what they've learned.
All right, and Jeanette Hartzell says, thanks. I learned so much.
Thank you all. It was really a pleasure.
And so, yeah, thank you so much, Deborah. Really, really lots of people on this Lunch and Learn, and really a topic that we hadn't addressed yet so much. So thank you for your expertise and, for your native yard, and obviously for speaking to the Orange County Commission on behalf of native trees.
Yes. Okay. Y'all have a good rest of the day.
Okay. Everyone have a great weekend. And if you're not an FNPS member, join today, fnps.org. And reserve your license plate. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Valerie.
Bye, Deborah.